Hello, everyone. Welcome to a series that was abandoned a long time ago. In fact, I don't know when the last one of these was. I could find out probably um, real quick. I don't know. Let's see. Um, okay, 21st of September last year. So it's been a year and 3 months, roughly, since I did one of these. So yeah, it's the Barrel Vision Spotlight, which is a video type, like a series originally invented to just essentially just fill. This was when we sort of thought like, oh, we need to do something pretty much every day, which by the way, if you want to be like a really successful YouTuber, you obviously do. Not that I should be giving advice on that, but quite a while ago now, I sort of hung up the idea of doing something every day because that's just too taxing. This is a hobby. If I treated this like an actual job, then it'll be terrible, wouldn't it? It would be even worse, probably. The content would probably be even worse. We'd have even less to talk about, and all sorts of nonsense. I mean, obviously the keeping on top of patches. You know, like today, same day this comes out, I did a video on a hot fix. It's literally one line. It's the smallest patch probably ever, and now it's just kind of funny. But that's, and I was very self-aware about how sort of silly it seemed. But you know, it's still me sort of upkeeping this promise to deliver on everything that you need to know about the game. So it's just kind of odd. But the reason why this series is coming back to Barrel Vision Spotlight, even before I explain what it actually is because the Overclock Workshop is over. Is there going to be a season 2? No. It's a short answer. And what I mean by season 2, well, I was considering basically just doing it again. Just doing the Overclock Workshop again on my own. I know I couldn't rope Tyler into that, but I am thinking still about doing possibly doing reworks or other things. I think the workshop will probably make its way back into the channel at some point in some form. But for now, this is kind of just to stave off, make sure there isn't a lack of video on this day. Obviously, this alternates still with build showcases, which there won't be one next week due to just taking a break over Christmas. But yeah, for now, I'm going to do this. And the Barrel Vision Spotlight it started off very formulaic. It started off very chronological almost, just going through the classes, and then I started to go through their weapons as well, which was intentional, but it was also the series itself was also intended to be just focus on one specific thing in every video, no matter how obscure it's going to be. So it's eventually going to get much more obscure than it was. If we started with the classes, it was going to eventually get to things like this, or things as obscure as individual status effects. But to me, it made actually more sense if I was going to bring this back to focus on anything, be completely random so as to not have a bias. So basically what I did, I clicked the random page button on the wiki, and it gave me Rockpox Goo, and then I set to work on doing what the point of the series is, which is basically me just riffing on the given subject for however long I can. And so the Rockpox Goo is the subject of this one, and I just need to see what I can say about it. I have made some notes, I'm not going completely blind, I do have a few things to say, but we are immediately going to turn our heads to the wiki, I suppose. That's not the wiki, that's me looking for the previous spotlights. And here's the wiki. It's not complete, which I can't really blame them for. It's a Rockpox Goo, but the wiki guys, they do the Lord's work, really. But it'd be nice if there was a bit more to it. That's not a request, that's not a complaint. It's just there's not a lot here. But we're going to go through what's here and then obviously get onto my own sort of thoughts as well. So the Rockpox Goo, as the lift phage infection has aggressively evolved and turned airborne, even flying creatures of Hoxie's have begun to succumb to the disease. The Rockpox Goo is one such result. It has been observed spreading goo containing traces of lithophage throughout the cave systems, greatly expanding the reach of the disease and its potential effect on wildlife. R&D recommends destroying the goo sacs to stop the spread and to stay well out of the resulting puddles to avoid undue contamination of company material. That is, of course, the miner's manual description. It's interesting to me. I think I immediately want to dive into the subject of the choice of the Rockpox Goo as one of the flying Rockpox enemies. Obviously, we have two. We arguably have three. If you don't know what that third one is, I would say it's spores that Harold releases, but you can't actually kill those, so maybe you wouldn't really consider them creatures. But yeah, in Season 4, we got added 2 Rockpox enemies. One is much more common than the other. The other one is the Breeder. I think the Breeder was a really good choice. I think it looks really cool as well, especially the way it sort of Hindenburgs when you destroy it, or when you kill it. The Rockpox Goo, on the other hand, to me is not so succinct a choice. And even then, if we were, for example, talking about the Breeder, I would bring up a very big issue I have with it, in that it's nowhere near common enough. To me, the fact that you can play a Lithophage mission and have normal breeders in it is completely wrong. They should all be replaced with Rockpox breeders because you really just don't see them. They're like the rarest enemy, like really, like the rarest normal enemy, if you would consider them a normal enemy. Outside of bosses and like things like prospectors, which are of course a very rare entity in the game. But the Rockpox Goo Bomber is essentially their infantry flying Rockpox enemy, and I don't know how much I think align with that choice. I think the most basic aspect of disagreeing with that is the fact that the Goo Bomber is already one of the few enemies outside of the Rockpox, previously existing, that has destructible weak points. And this is the reason why, after some deliberation, I landed on the conclusion that a Rockpox bulk detonator would probably not be the best idea, because it wouldn't be much different from the original, except the fact that I guess it would corrupt the ground around it and things like that. But we got the corruptor, and you actually fight the corruptor in a fairly interesting way. But a Rockpox bulk detonator would basically be just the same, except now the weak points are instantly destructible. And the Goo Bomber carries that over. It still has the sacks, which are destructible, but they no longer act as weak points. You can simply destroy them to prevent it from spreading Rockpox, which is obviously a good thing. Especially because, and this is actually a compliment, the Rockpox Goo Bomber is fairly interesting to fight because of the way the blisters are positioned. And I think after truly learning, like realizing that the blisters are placed in random locations on the creatures, my respect for Rockpox as an enemy type really shot all the way up. It's really easy to go in with something that works well against them. Things that pierce, things that have wide projectiles, things that have lots of bullets and are quite precise also work very well, anything like that. So you can go into a Rockpox mission equipped for a job, but there's still a level of unpredictability to the enemies themselves I think is really cool. And the Goo Bomber really hits that because so often flying in a particular direction that either its front or its back is away from you in a way that you can't really get to because it's moving away from you. You can't really catch up to it too easily and find the weak point that you've missed. Sometimes it can be quite high up, almost on top of the Goo Bomber itself, which is obviously the hardest place to hit possible that the Goo Bomber's blister could be. But yeah, I still in principle don't know how I feel about the decision to take one of the enemies with already destructible weak points and make that a Rockpox enemy. And that's why I do think this is a carryover of the Magma Bomber. Now, if you don't know what the Magma Bomber is, I think I can actually... I'm going to try and show you the Magma Bomber. Hold on. So here's the trailer for Update 33, New Frontiers, which added the new bite, the Hollow Bow and the Azure Wield. It added the other Dreadnought variants, aside from the default. It added the Mactera Trijaw and the Brundle, which we'll get to as well. But that's kind of one of the points. It added new enemies in the sense of giving Illumination this overhaul by adding 2 new Dreadnoughts, or arguably 3 if you include the twins both, but also expanding up the enemy roster with Mactera specifically. Hopefully we'll see the Magma Bomber, which I believe was meant to be a Magma Core exclusive enemy, which might be one... What the hell is that? Oh, it's just a dwarf hanging from a cave angel. Okay, hold on, it should come up soon. There it is. There's our Magma Bomber. So a Mactera Magma Bomber. Okay, yes, and it wasn't a biome exclusive, as we can see it in the salt pits here. So yeah, they were planning a third new Mactera enemy, and it was going to be the Magma Bomber, or at least a new type of Goo Bomber. And do I think that they carried that over? Yeah, kind of. Because if you've another thing I want to actually find is the original Betsy model, or one of the original Betsy models, which I believe I'm going to have to go to cut content for, not Betsy specifically. No, I'm not cut content. Okay, we'll start with Betsy. There is a version, like a previous iteration of the blisters themselves. You see, okay, so you can see one of them here, or a couple of them here. That one and these two specifically. Okay, I'm not sure where the actual cut content thing is, but there was something that I saw a while ago that basically a previous version of Betsy's parasites that is really similar to some of the Rockpox blisters. One of the versions of the Rockpox blisters. So it sort of really drums up this interesting query about how original Rockpox is really, especially when they're all based on previously existing enemies, except for Harold. Even the larvae are objectively adjacent to the parasites. They use the same movement. They have almost the same model. So it's kind of hard to escape that, which is why I do think the Rockpox Goo Bomber is somewhat of a translation of the original Magma Bomber. Which is a shame because I think it wasn't the right choice for the standard Rockpox flying enemy. I think it should have been the Brundle. And I'm going to immediately jump to the fact that the Brundle is one of the least interesting enemies in the game. It's simply an armored Mactera. Now you could say, oh, but the Grunt is, the Grunt Guard is just an armored Grunt. And I'd say, yes, that is correct, but it at least has something beyond that. The Grunt Guard at least has the aspect of the action of shielding its face from fire, which the Brundle doesn't have to do because it's entirely covered in armor already. It can't really do anything like that. And the Guard at least has something to distinguish it. The Brundle is just a Mactera spawn with armor. And I think it could be so much more than that. We've obviously thrown around ideas of it being essentially a bowling ball. It would sort of drop and roll towards you, or more appropriately, probably use itself as a pendulum and fly towards you in a swinging motion, like a swooping motion, and just try and hit you with its body. But that would entail reworking the Brundle as it is. But if they were to have created a Rockpox version of it, I think that could have been really interesting because what it could have done, it could have still been armored. And this is the thing about Rockpox enemies: none of them actually utilize armor mechanics in any way. Like the only arguable example is Harold because he has shield segments that are reminiscent of the Dreadnought shield segments and whatnot, and a Caretaker. Obviously, you destroy those with litho tools, not with actual weapons of armor breaking. But the Brundle could have still had blisters on the outside, but also could have had armor. Could have actually been armored, and if you accidentally break the armor, the actual point would be to avoid breaking the armor, because if you break the armor, then it basically exposes all of the Rockpox fluid that's sort of building up. It could almost be spilling out of it before you even break the armor, but it sort of just starts spilling out, and it becomes essentially what the Rockpox Goo Bomber is if you accidentally break the armor, which is actually the inverse of the Goo Bomber, which I think would be really interesting, because obviously the Rockpox Goo Bomber, you destroy the blisters or the main goo sacks, it will stop releasing Rockpox Goo. If you accidentally break the Rockpox Brundle's armor, then it would start actually releasing the goo after that point, and I think that could have been really interesting. So yeah, but the Rockpox Goo Bomber in general is a fine addition to the arsenal. I find it interesting because Goo Bombers feel so common. They arguably feel more common than normal Mactera. Obviously, if you're going to see normal Mactera, like Mactera Spawn or Trial specifically, Brundles are weirdly rare on top of that. You're going to see a lot more of them than you would Goo Bombers, but Goo Bombers feel like they're in almost every mission as like a Praetorian almost, so that's pretty much the same level as a Praetorian, and that's kind of weird. So yeah, in general, I do think they've really picked some of the most basic options to turn into Rockpox enemies, Like we got the Spitter, Exploder, Rockpox Goo Bomber, so like, yeah, I think that makes sense. That's why I think the Breeder's interesting. Breeders are pretty common, especially in bigger missions, like bigger caves. You're always going to see Breeder, but I still think that was an interesting choice. But, I was really thinking about things like a Shellback that like leaves a Rockpox trail as it rolls, and the blisters are on the outside, and that when it actually uncurls, that would actually be when it's hard, when it's less vulnerable. It should be more vulnerable while it's moving, when it's rolling. I thought that'd be really interesting. But that's not what we've got. We got the Rockpox Goo Bomber, who is, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of cool. The actual trail that it leaves has this like weird shine to it as well, which is just a weird sort of decent visual flair, I guess. Yeah, the Rockpox Goo Bomber. So let's see what else there is actually to say about it. We actually have the health sort of stats here. Something I want to note is the blister health of being 5. Which is why there's nothing in the game that can't destroy the one in one hit. But they do have a resistance to radial damage of 90%. This is why things like the grenade launcher are actually really bad against Rockpox enemies. The only thing I want to talk about is really not Goo Bomber specific, which is why I hope I don't get another Rockpox enemy next time, because I haven't been able to get too much out of it. Also, what is elite resistance? What does that mean? What is that? Hey? What is that? Anyway, yeah, health. So you can see ridiculous health numbers. Starting at the lowest is 1,800. The basic one most of us would experience is probably somewhere around here, or certainly me would experience this sort of level. I think I forgot to play the music again. There it is. Sorry, I mean, as you can tell, I am a distinguished professional. But yeah, I just find these sort of health numbers funny because they look huge, and they are huge, but then you realise that destroying Blister deals this amount of damage to the Goo Bomber. 1,333.33, I assume recurring, which is just kind of funny to me. And it brings up a weird sort of fact about Rockpox enemies. Obviously, you can kill them without destroying the blisters. But there's also sort of the fail-safe that if you only pop the blisters, that will work. It's like if you pop all the blisters, that automatically kills it. Not even just from the damage itself necessarily. I mean, it would, but it's also just an automatic thing. But you don't have to do that to kill them either. You can pop most of the blisters. In some cases, I would say mainly any of the smaller ones actually, they're still tough, but like the Grunt and the Spitter and the Exploder, you can kill them with normal gunfire. You can. It's not insanely hard to do. They're not the most tanky things in the world. But a Rockpox Goo Bomber or a Praetorian or the Breeder, I would really not recommend trying that. This is a kind of one where you've really got to just actually use things that you're meant to use against it. Actually go for the blisters, which is actually interesting in the Goo Bomber's case because it's one of the hardest ones to hit the blisters on, I would say. Praetorian is one of the easier ones because they often take time to just stand still and attack. Goo Bomber's always on the move. So in terms of any advice I can give on a Rockpox Goo Bomber, I would say stay away from it. You don't want to be under it. The goo is much more dangerous than the normal Goo Bomber. The normal Goo Bomber's goo doesn't do damage to you when you're standing in it. It just slows you down. It's obviously different in this case. It actually inflicts Rockpox. Also, weapons like the Breach Cutter is really good against the Rockpox Goo Bomber. Although I can't really say that I think there's much of any other really specific weapons that are good against the Rockpox Goo Bomber specifically. I'm just racking my brain, and I would say not necessarily. So I don't have any distinct advice, but it's also not the most insanely difficult creature to deal with. And that's kind of the thing about Rockpox, I think. They don't really have an enemy that is super lethal, but I guess it's just because they're supposed to be just sort of a mass of different things that all kind of they all look different and all kind of do different things, but they all have a proportionally similar level of strength. But yeah, the Rockpox Goo Bomber is kind of cool. I mean, sort of if I was to give it a rating of how comprehensive of an enemy is as part of the enemy pool, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10 or something, to be honest. It's not the most insanely awesome thing in the world, but it's a pretty cool guy, I would say. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Yeah, the Rockpox Goo Bomber. Gaze upon his visage and feel fear, or you probably won't, because he's not that dangerous, but he's also, I do think the element of the blisters being hard to hit is probably the most engaging aspect of this guy. I've definitely felt that when I've been, playing the game. Yeah, but that is this episode of the Barrel Vision Spotlight done. If you enjoyed, please make sure to, let me know, actually, because it's kind of important, especially because been a lot of growth since a lot of channel growth since the last one of these. I don't know how well it's going to be received. I'm also really open to ideas as well, although it's going to be a combination of, I will definitely want to take on board what people say, but if I were to, for example, click a random page again, what would I get? Voice lines. Right, with individual voice line pages, I guess I'd have to pick an individual one. Removed voice lines could be pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll do that, or you can leave a suggestion. Maybe suggest one of the voice lines specifically. If I don't get any of that, I'll just do a random number generator for it. Alright, so yeah, that is the first episode of the revived Barrel Vision Spotlight. If you enjoyed, please make sure to like, subscribe, and if you want to stay on top of everything to do with Deep Rock and Road Core, as I've proven today, literally doing a video on a hotfix that's 1 line long. The video is literally less than a minute. Then please click the bell as well. You will stay up to date with everything, I promise you. Even more than usual. I feel like I actually really need to step up, because there's been things I've missed before. I can't remember exactly what I've missed. But I've missed things. What I don't do is do the actual announcement of when these events go live, because that's just contained within the preview. But there have been things that I've sort of skipped over before, I'm pretty sure. Like the board game update, but that's about the board game and not about Deep Rock itself. Oh well, goodbye.